Behind this curtain, you're going to see probably the strangest freak that was ever born to this world. Back here, you are going to see, from Mysore, India, little Kashmir Singh, a little baby boy who has not one, but two complete, fully developed heads. Well, of course, the man that really started me in the business was Milt Robbins. He was the son of Frank A. Robbins, that they printed that wonderful series of stories on him in the Bandwagon. And Milt was a good businessman. He understood what you should do to get money, and better than most people, he was aware of how to hold on to some of it. And one of the things, I was 15 years old when I started to work for Milt on Daly Brothers Circus, and I've always appreciated that he taught me the economics, and he also broke me into being a front talker on the Sideshow, and so I learned the business end, not just the performing end. And of course, I was wanted to make money, I guess, from the first day I got in the business. I had no experience. But as a child, 8 years, 9 years of age, we were living in Illinois, and there was a sideshow, what they called in the old days a store show, in the wintertime, where sideshow men would come in and rent an empty building and put the sideshow and stay for a week. And they had a special promotion with Meadow Gold Dairies. For a nickel, you could get in between 4 and 6 p.m. For the school kids. And you got a little cup of Meadow Gold ice cream with a wooden spoon and got to see the show.
This was in your hometown?
This was in Kankakee, Illinois, which was one of my hometowns. And I went to that show, of course, and I had just had the nickel, but I got in, I got my ice cream, and I remember not too much about that show. I remember they had an Indian who was doing something, because my hometown in Nebraska, each summer they had the big celebration was the Indian powwow, and I think from a kid on, I was fascinated by those feathered headpieces and all, and that's why when I do a show, even today with the Sideshow, I put big feathered headpieces on the girls to come out on the valley. But in that show, they also had a pinhead and a fire eater. Remember them? But the thing that really impressed me was they had a magician, and as he did the tricks, he'd say, "Now in a moment I'm going to pass these out free." Boy, I wanted one of those tricks. Next trick, he'd go through it. I'm going to pass that one out free. Then when he got all done up to the last trick, he'd say, "Now I'm going to put all the tricks in the bag. Remember this and this and this and this." Put about 5 things in the bag. Now all you have to do to get all of these free tricks is to buy just one of these, and it's 25 cents. Of course, I didn't have a quarter, so I didn't get one. I was so impressed with that pitch, and I never forgot it. In my research, many years later, I know now that that was Walter D. Lenz, and he was the king of the magic pitchmen. He was out of Coney Island.
Who was that?
Walter D. Lenz.
How do you spell it?
Capital D-E, capital L-E-N-Z.
Okay. Hold on just a second. Let me check it back.
12 years old, and my father was working as a timekeeper on the construction of the Air Force Base at McCook, Nebraska. And he invited me to come and stay with him for a week in the spring. And it just so happened that that week there was a store show that was owned by Johnny Howard. And he had his sideshow in a store building there in McCook. And it was only a dime to get in, and my dad had given me a few dollars. So I'd go every day and hang out in the store show. And they had a very good show in there. And I had a magician and a ventriloquist. His name was Don Taylor. And he did a similar pitch to what I'd seen Walter D. Lenz do. And then I noticed that the fat girl was cutting out the little paper dolls to make the shadow dancer, and the little colored dwarf was folding up the papers to make the coin vanish, and so on. And I bought a package of the tricks. And so it would have been several years later when I was 15, and I got my job with Daly Brothers Circus. And I had never forgotten that pitch and all, and it looked to me like they were doing pretty good with that. So at the time, my dad and I were living in a walk-up hotel in downtown Denver, and this would have been in 1944. There were a lot of hotels in Denver at that time downtown, and all the hotels had a writing desk in their lobby. So about once a week, I'd put on my best clothes so I wouldn't get run out, and I'd go around to the hotels, and I'd, sit in the lobby for a couple of minutes and look around, and okay, I'm not going to get run out. So then I'd go over to the writing desk, and I'd sit there for a few minutes, and then I would steal all the stationery. And then I would go back to my room, and I would cut out and paste up the dancing girl and fold up the coin vanish and so on and so forth. And when I got ready to leave and join the circus, my uncle gave me an old steamer trunk. Well, I only had one or two pieces of wardrobe. Didn't have a lot of clothes and didn't have a lot of props, but I had at least a half a trunk full of envelopes that were made up magic tricks, pitch items. And the opening day of Daly Brothers Circus in 1946, I was 15. And
Gonzales?
in Gonzales, on the winter quarters. And I said to Mr. Robbins, I said, Mr. Robbins, would it be all right when I do the magic act if I sold some novelties? He said, novelty? We've got a novelty joint out on the Midway. What are you talking about? What kind of novelties? I said, well, I've got some magic tricks that I'd like to sell. Oh, he said, you want a pitch? First time I ever heard the word. I said, well, yes. He said, the package doesn't cost more than a nickel, does it? I said, no. He said, what are you going to go for, a quarter? I said, yes. He said, fine, I get a third. And I was in business from the very first time I ever stepped on a sideshow stage. Now, I didn't know what I was doing. It wasn't a good package. I didn't have a couple of the items I needed. And believe it or not, it probably took me, I'm going to say, 15 years, maybe 20 years, before I ever learned to really pitch a magic package. And I learned it from Bobby Reynolds and Stu Miller, because both of them were experts, and they had been taught by Walter DeLenz in Coney Island. So then I did the Coney Island pitch, which first started out with a diminishing card. Watch the little card. It gets smaller and smaller. All the spots are gone. Now, that's a nice little trick you can have a lot of fun with. I'm going to pass these out free in just a minute. I'd start with I'm getting ahead of my story. I'd start with the ventriloquist thing. And then I would take the people say, a lot of people wonder what makes the dummy talk. Let me show you. Now, I'd take the head off, and I'd say, this is the way that you hold it. This is the way you move it. And if you wiggle your thumb that way, that makes the mouth open and close. And then all you have to do to make the dummy to come to life is to throw your voice into the dummy. And that's very easy too, and here's why. And I'd take out a Swiss warbler bird whistle. I'd say this is called a voiceover, sometimes called the Swiss warbler. It comes with the instructions right on the package. And with the aid of this little instrument, you can throw your voice into a doll like this, up on the roof, down in the basement, into the next room, under your teacher's desk at school, or behind you in the movie theater during the love scene. You can have a lot of fun with these. I'm going to pass these out in just a minute, but I didn't say they were free. See, Now the card trick. Then I said, now, no show is complete without dancing girls. And we have a dancing girl in our magic show. I call her Susie. This is little Susie. And you hold up as printed like a stage curtains. And it was blank. Now, all you have to do to get Susie to appear is to light a match behind the curtain. And there's Susie. Now, when you move the match around, Susie starts to dance. And the more you move it, the faster she dances. Of course, that's not a great trick. I mean, after all, you could wave a match under behind of any girl and she'll wiggle around some. I want to show you a picture. And everybody loves butterflies. Here's a picture of one. Now, you know it's a butterfly because it says so right in the corner. And if you take this butterfly, fold it in half, hold it up to a light, and you see an entirely different picture. This one is a picture of an old man peeking into the bedroom of two young ladies. Well, what they're doing there we won't talk about. But let's take that picture and fold it in half again. Hold it back to... Oh, my goodness, what's going on now? Well, that's nobody's business but your own. And when you girls get one, for goodness sakes, don't show it to the boys. Boys, if you get one, please don't show it to the girls. I'm going to pass those out, too, in just a minute. Has anybody here got a cigarette? Oh, thank you very much. I'm going to take this cigarette, and remember the magic words from making the card get smaller and smaller? I have to say those words. Put the cigarette right here and watch it. Ringy, dingy, lollipop. So it's gone. Oh, it didn't go very far away. It's right here. If you have one of those cigarette vanishers, you can have a lot of fun with that. And I'm going to pass those out free in just a minute. But I want to get back just a minute to the whistle, the voiceover. You can make a lot of fun with that. You can make funny sounds with it. And actually what I did at that point, I switched and I was using a swallow. Not that word. A swazzle, which is the Punch and Judy sound, If you see a pretty girl across the street and you want to attract her attention, you say, "Hi there, sweetie, come on over here." And she'll come right over with a policeman. And if you are in the movies and a love scene is going on, you know how quiet it gets in the movies during the love scene? Nobody wants to be disturbed. That's the time that the baby cries, "I want my mama, I want my mama." Don't worry, they'll find out where you're sitting, throw you out, and you'll miss the best part of the movie. Of course, if you're in school and you like to irritate the teacher during a test, you can always blow your nose. And you'll fail the test. You can have a lot of fun with this. Throw your voice, make the funny noises, and I'm going to pass these out to you today. All you have to do to get the little card trick, to get the dancing girl trick, the butterfly picture, and no one should ever be without the cigarette vanisher. Isn't that right, sir? You point to the guy who you borrowed the cigarette from, and then you take your scarf, which is on your table, and you remove it, and you got a big bundle of cigarettes there. And then you take that one and stick it into the bundle. And you'll never have to buy another cigarette as long as you live. Isn't that right, sir? And now, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to give you this entire bag of magic tricks. And all you have to do to get this free bag of tricks is to buy just one of these funny whistles for the same price that you would pay if you could find one downtown in a novelty store. They're only started out in those days at 25 cents, and by the time I was done pitching years later, I was going for $1. And I have to say I made a lot of money pitching magic. When I started, and after a few days I dropped the price to $0.10 because I didn't know I wasn't doing it right yet. But then on the Daily Show, the next year, that year I was doing magic and eating fire. That's what I was hired for. And I didn't have anybody to teach me how to eat fire, so I was self-taught. And of course wasn't doing that right either, and I burnt the hell out of myself several times. And the Daily Show was such a great show to be on in order to learn things. And somebody on the show taught me the proper way to eat fire. I think it was Charlie Ally, who was the Sideshow boss canvasman. His wife, Martha, taught me how to handle snakes. Harry Leonard was the Punch and Judy man. He taught me how to use the swazzle, the whistle. It was an old guy there, Floyd Arnold, the musical Rube. And he had a contraption with whiskey bottles hanging on a pipe rack, and he would play the whiskey bottles tuned with water and like a xylophone, and he taught me how to do that. So and then in the middle of the season, I decided instead of being a magician, I'd rather be a ventriloquist, because doing the magic, you have to repack all of the stuff each show and get it, prepare it. And with the ventriloquist, all you have to do is pick up the dummy and you're ready to go. So it was a matter of laziness that I decided I wanted to do vent. And so there was an ad in a billboard of a ventriloquist figure carver in Los Angeles. His name was Taylor. And I wrote two of them. One, I had, in school, I'd been taking a printing class. And we had to have one project where we actually printed something. And so I made business cards. The Great Hall. And I sent one of those business cards to a man by the name of Foy Brown, who was a fireman in Lawrence, Kansas. But he also carved ventriloquist figures, beautiful figures. And I sent one of those to him, and I asked him, what's the cheapest thing you got? And he wrote me a letter back, and he said, I have nothing cheap, so I don't suppose you will buy. If you're so damn great, why don't you have a letterhead? About 2 years later, I did buy a figure from him. We became good friends. But the figure I actually bought was the one from the guy in Los Angeles, Taylor. Well,
What was his name?
Taylor, I don't remember.
No, the name of your dummy.
My dummy, for his entire lifetime, and still is, Perky Perkins. And so it was about, maybe 2 or 3 weeks from the time I put in the order until I got it, because he hand carved all this stuff. And in the meantime, Gene Mercer came on the circus doing vent on Daly Brothers. And so by now, the middle of the season, I had turned 16, so now I was 16 years old. And when the figure arrived, it was beautiful, and so I took it and I showed it to Gene. And Gene said, oh my God, that's a beautiful figure. What did you pay for it? I said, well, it cost me more than a week's salary. It cost me $35. I was getting $30 a week. And he said, I'll give you $35 for it right now. I said, no, I don't want to sell it. So what are you going to do with it? I said, well, I want to learn to do vent. And he said, do you know how to do it? I said, I haven't got a clue. He said, tell you what I'll do. If you will sell me that figure for $35, I will give you my figure, which actually was a better figure, but it wasn't as pretty. He said, I will give you $35, I will give you my figure, and I will teach you how to do the act. Wonderful. So I learned to do vent. In that first year on the circus, I learned a half a dozen things.
How long did it take you to learn?
To do vent, actually, it's very easy. You have to practice in front of a mirror. That's the only thing. And so anyway, about 2 weeks later, Gene came to me and he said, I'm going to leave the show, and I do not expect to ever do vent again in my life. If you want the figure, you can have it back for $35. So now, for $35, I had 2 figures and knew how to do the act. And to this very day, I still use some of the same corny gags that I learned for the routine that Gene taught me in 1946.
Such as?
How do you feel today? Oh, I feel just fine. How are you? Well, I don't feel very well. Well, what's the matter? I think I have a cold in my head. Well, I'm glad you got something in it. Corny, but it still gets laughs, you know. And so anyway, you were asking about businessmen. So I guess I was a businessman right from the start, because by the second year over there, I was not selling the magic that year because Dave Curtis was doing magic, but I was doing vent and pitching a cartoon book. And then when I did the fire, I think I was pitching a look-backoscope, and
A what?
it was a little box about that big square, and it had it had two holes in one side and another in the top. And you had to put they'd send you the box, but you had to insert the eyelets yourself, finish it up. And, okay, here's the pitch on that. Here is a novelty that is the newest sensation in novelty stores. It is direct from Paris. Smell it. You can smell the Sierra on it. This is called the look-backoscope. And it has 3 viewers, one there and 2 on this side. And if you hold it up to your eye like this, you can see behind you. You know what's going on behind you at all times. Now, if you're at the circus and it's crowded, you can't see over people's head, just turn it upside down. Use it like a periscope and you won't miss a single thing. If you hold it up to your hand and hold your hand in front of a bright light, look in the single viewer, move it slowly, and just like an x-ray, you can see the bones of your hand. Now, fellas, since it works like an x-ray, you be careful when there's girls around. You be careful where you point it, because you might see something you're not supposed to see. Now, if you'd like to have one of these, I'm going to pass out a limited number of them. I think I have 10 of them today. So the first 10 people who pass up a quarter are going to get one of the look back. Thank you, sir. That's number 1. Thank you, lady. Number 2. The little boy here, number 3. Oh, this young lady, number 4. This gentleman, number 5. Oh, over here, this gentleman, number 6. And thank you, little boy, number 7. Here's the young lady, number 8. And here's a lady, number 8. And here's the gentleman back here, number 8. I only have 10 of them now, so there's only a couple left. And this is number 8. And over here, number 8. Never got ahead. But it was a good item. And for 6 of the 8 years that I had the sideshow at Madison Square Garden with Nate Eagles on the Ringling Show, and we used the look-backoscope as the pitch item on the front stage.
What did it cost you?
They were made by a Warwick Press in Warwick, Rhode Island. They came, I think, 25 to a box. And they ended up, they cost about a nickel. And we went for 25 cents. And then I also, when I was doing the fire reading, then I pitched the keyhole card. A card with in fact, I used a rubber stamp for the keyhole, made it myself. This is a very interesting novelty. This is a picture of a keyhole. Now hold it up to a light, look through it, you won't see anything. Nothing's going on. But if you dip this into vinegar and hold it up to a light, you're going to see what little Johnny saw when he was peeking through the keyhole of his big sister's bedroom on her wedding night. And they're only a dime or whatever, because I started with the good pitch, but I was doing 4 pitches in every time that the show went around.
So what happened when you dipped it in vinegar when you got home?
What?
What happened when you dipped it in vinegar when you got home?
I didn't say you. I said you're going to see what little Johnny saw. He didn't see anything. The lights were off. But if people came back and said, it didn't work, then well, what kind of vinegar did you use? Did you use acid vinegar or apple vinegar? And of course, but for a dime, I think it was not a ripoff. And but anyway, I told you how it started that first day, and Milt said, okay, and I get a third. Well, Millie Curtis, who was the company nurse and also the inside lecturer MC in the Sideshow, Millie Curtis,
Okay.
and that first year, her husband Dave was in charge of the reserve seat ushers, and the second year, then he was back in the Sideshow doing magic. But Dave and Millie Curtis, especially Millie, they kind of took me under their charge and took care of me, and made sure that that I didn't associate with the wrong people, and also one reason I ended up with a little money was because Millie kept my money for me, and so anyway, we had been on the road for maybe a couple of weeks. And one morning, right before we opened, and Millie called, "Come here, Ward." I said, "Yes, ma'am." She said, "Did I just see you giving Milt Robbins some money?" I said, "Well, yes." She said, "Is he taking part of your pitch?" I said, "Well, yeah, I give him a third." "Well, you're working too damn hard around this show to be giving him any money. Don't you give him any more." So I never gave up any more of my pitch, and Milt never said a word because I was working hard. I helped lay out the lot in the morning, I put it up, took it down, and did all those acts in the show. And but Milt Robbins was like a father to me, and it's funny because now that I've got shows, I'm very reluctant to give anybody a pitch. And I followed an example that was set to me by Sam Alexander, who was a good businessman in the Sideshow. He said, "I never take anybody's pitch money." And I had worked for him and I pitched. And I said, "Why?" He said, "The people that resent, you're paying them a salary to do their act, and if they have to give you back some money, they resent it." And he said, also, a lot of people don't want to give you an honest count, and then you resent that. So now here is a good performer yourself. You've been friends, you respect each other, but you get to the point you don't like each other anymore because this guy thinks you're taking money you shouldn't have, and this guy thinks this man over here is cheating you, not giving you a good count. So he said, better for the little bit you get, let them keep all their money. And I always did that. And it works. This is a good system. It works well. And I think that was the thing with Milt. I didn't know what I was doing. I was, paying him 75 cents a dollar a day, which he didn't need. And, so that's what he never said, why bother. But he let me get by with murder because I had 4 pitches in there.
What did he?
By the time we were, by 1949, when that show went to Canada, and the pitches were so good, I found out I was making more money as a $35 a week sideshow act as what the feature act was getting with the entire circus.
What was it that made Milt Robbins a good role model for you?
First of all, he was a man with very good habits. He was honest. He had wonderful experience, been in the business all his life. And he also had hard times. And so he valued the value of money. And as I said earlier, he knew how to make money with the sideshow because he knew what to do, and he also knew how to save some. Running a sideshow was, and he was a great sideshow manager, but that was not his first love. Probably what he did, he told me in the circus, the season that he enjoyed the very most was the season of 1943 He was the drummer in the band on Mills Brothers Circus. He was a good musician, and he loved that playing the music. Uh, Other good, very good businessmen that I was around in 1950. My late partner Harry Leonard and I were doing a juggling and ice throwing act, and it was in the spring of the year, and we were playing nightclubs up around Detroit, and we had 3 or 4 fairs booked where we were going to work in the grandstand show. But then the work dried up, and we knew that we were not going to be able to hold out until the fairs. So I said, well, I guess we better find us a circus to go on and find a job. So we went to a newsstand in Detroit and we bought a billboard. Opened it up to the circus page. Lo and behold, there's an ad. Seal Brothers Circus wants sideshow manager and acts. Ward Hall and Harry Leonard, please answer. So in those days you couldn't call, so you'd telegraph back and forth. It took a few days. Bud Anderson. And we went out there and thought the show had been doing good business. We got there on the payday, the first one they missed. The show hadn't been doing good business. But and on the way to Williston, North Dakota from Detroit, and we tipped over, they had floods up there that spring, and the highway was full of chock holes. And I hit a big chock hole, broke the axle on the trailer and tipped over. And a priest and a guy driving a beer truck came along and saw us there. And they helped us, and we pushed, it was just a 12-foot trailer, and pushed it back upright. The priest went on into town, sent out a mechanic. He took a look and said, went back, got an axle put on. We were on our way again in 4 hours. And when we...
What car was that?
Huh?
What kind of car were you?
I had a 1941 Buick. And that little trailer was a homemade trailer that had been the projection booth on Brian Wood's little tent show, because he gave movies each night and also had the little show in there, live show. And we'd been with him one winter, and he built himself a new trailer for the projection booth, and so we bought that one for $150. Well, anyway, we arrived in Williston and worked the show, and I was to get 15% of the front door of the sideshow for managing it. And of course, we had the pitches and the blow-off and so on. And Bud came to me that...
Did you say 15 or 50?
15.
15?
15%. And that was pretty good. Milt got 10% on the Daily Show. Of course, handled a lot more money. And Bud came to me that night. I must have come over before the night show. And he said, I know, and you know, it's customary that when you check the ticket boxes that you bring all of the gross, all the money, and turn it into the wagon. And he said, but Ward, I know that if you don't get paid, you're not going to stay. He didn't know it, but we had less than $40 when we landed on that lot, and we couldn't have left if we didn't get paid. But anyway, he said, and I need you, and I want you. And he said, so every night you take out your percentage and turn the rest into the office. That was a good businessman. And it's something that I have followed the rest of my life. I'm going to take mine out first, then I'll give them theirs. Don't turn it all in and wait for them to give you something back. And so I've been on a couple shows that went bust, but I can't complain. I got my money. But anyway, we were only there about, maybe 3 weeks. And we were making the jump into Miles City, Montana. And right before you get to Miles City, go down a mountain, and that road was flat. It wasn't graded. And right at the top of the mountain, before you started going down, Bud was pulled over to the side with the semi with the horses. He always drove his own horse truck. He loved his horses. And we pulled up behind him. So something we can do, you got a problem. He said, no, I'm just letting my brakes cool down before I go down the mountain. He said, because they haven't been working right, but I've got an appointment with the garage. As soon as I get in, I'm going to unhook the tractor and take it to the garage. So you just go on ahead. Okay, thank you. We went on in, but instead of going right to the lot, we went downtown. We had a little shopping to do or something and have breakfast. And we were having breakfast right across the street from the telegraph office. And Jack Turner, who was the legal adjuster, came out of the telegraph office, and I knocked on the window and waved at him, and he came over and he said, "My God, isn't it awful about Bud?" "What are you talking about?" He said, "He just got killed in a truck wreck." I said, "Oh no, we saw him just 30 minutes ago." He said, "Yeah." Well, it was within the last 30 minutes he got killed. The truck's brakes went out and the truck went over the mountain. And so anyway, it was kind of figured that the show would close. His son Norman, Luke Anderson, had the concessions on the show. Luke was always a good businessman. He knew what to do. And immediately his mother came out on the show. But at that time, Laura and Bud had been divorced, and he was married to Dorothy Anderson, who later became Mrs. Cy Rubens, that owned Rogers Brothers Circus. In fact, I believe that she immediately went to the long-distance phone and called Cy Rubens, and she tried to operate that circus by long distance for a couple of weeks. Anyway, the next Sunday, I think it was, I'm not sure what day of the week, but we were making a long jump, and we had a night show only. And we came across Stevens Brothers Circus, Little Bob Stevens, who was a lousy businessman. Wonderful guy, great little show, but he didn't know how to handle money. And so we stopped and visited and so on. And Bob said, "I need a sideshow manager. You know that show's going to close, so why don't you just stay here?" I said, "No, I can't do that. I promised him I would stay. I know it's going to close, and I'll get a hold of you as soon as it does. But in the meantime, I've got to stay there." So it wasn't long, maybe another week, and on the 3rd of July, we were in Wasco, Oregon, and between shows they came around and told us the show's closing tonight.
What year?
This would have been 1950. We went downtown right away and sent a telegram to Bob Stevens and to please wire us back. It's okay. But we knew wherever we went, we had to go east. So the next day we said, there's no use of us to sit here and twiddle our thumbs because it might be a day or two before Bob gets around to send us a telegram. But we had to go, wherever we were going, we had to go through the town that he had been in on the day that we closed in Oregon.
Bob Stevens?
Yeah, Little Bob. And so we just simply stopped in that town, went to the telegraph office, and I said, "My name is Ward Hall. There was a man by the name of Bob Stevens who was supposed to send me a telegram from here yesterday, and I didn't get it, and I just want to know, did he send me a telegram?" And they looked, "Oh, yes, he did." I said, "May I read it, please?" And all it was, the deal, okay, come on. So we joined that day, the 4th of July, on Stevens Brothers.
Where was it?
Oh, my God, where were we then? I think we might have been in Idaho, pretty sure. And business was not too good. And he got behind in some salaries too. But we were making a living. And then we got down into southern Missouri, and it was cotton time. And Missouri and Arkansas and Louisiana, every day The people went out picking the cotton, got paid $7 or $8, and night came to the circus. And we had about 6 very good weeks. And closed the season. Well, Bob went on. We didn't go with him for that because he didn't use Sideshow. But they closed the season. The circus became the grandstand show for the fair at Harlingen, Texas. And we were somewhere around Victoria. Because I remember we went into Victoria and there was a trailer sales there. We went in and bought us another house trailer. Factory built yet. But the next year, we went to Venice, California in the spring because we helped Norman Anderson reframe Seal Brothers Circus. And I managed, without losing any of the size of it, cut it down from 12 trucks to 8. And the only big noticeable difference was that year he just had an organist and did not have a band. The year before he had a very good band. And
Was that your first experience in helping build a circus?
well, I really didn't build anything. I mean, they just were rehashing, and I might have done a little painting or something. We were at Jimmy Woods' winter quarters, who had a lot of parade wagons, good, stuff that he rented to the movie studios. And I'd retouched the Sideshow banners and a few things like that. And we opened on April the 1st, 1951, at El Sonora, California, out in the desert. And from that first day, that show did nothing but business.
El Cajon?
Huh?
Did you say El Cajon?
No, El Sonora.
Oh.
El Sonora, California. And the show went on down into Arizona. We played little mining towns, Indian reservations, and every day, day after day after day, the show did big business. Went up into Nevada, played Las Vegas, went on up into Utah, and then from Utah across Idaho and up into Oregon and into Washington. And I made the biggest mistake I ever made in my life. I was making a lot of money for those days because I was getting 15% of the gross of the Sideshow, but I was also selling tickets on the number 2 ticket box, and they paid the ticket sellers 5%. So I took an extra 5%, and I had the best ticket box, of course. And then in the Sideshow, I had the magic pitch. Harry was pitching Punch and Judy whistles. And then, well, I have to go back to Bob Stevens for this. In the mid-season with Bob, somebody left the show, and he was short an act in the circus. So I went to him and I said, Bob, I do a juggling act, a balancing act. And if you want, I'll go in and do those acts in the circus. Well, he said, yeah, I got to have something. What do you got to have? I said, you don't have to give me anything. I'm going to pay you for the privilege. What the hell are you talking about? I said, I want to put another blow-off in the Sideshow, a 2-headed baby in a bottle. And let me have that. I'll give you 25% of it. Okay. Well, I didn't have a 2-headed baby. So I went down to the dime store or whatever, and I bought 2 rubber dolls, got the head off one, glued it on the other, put a coat of dark brown paint over them, and put a piece of tape across the back because it had a whistle in it, because if you squeezed it, it said Mama. And found a Tom's Toasted Peanuts jar on the counter of a restaurant, and I conned him into selling me that jar, and I turned it around with the sign to the back, filled it full of water, put some tea in it so that it would discolor, stuck the baby in it, and made the opening out the front of the curtain, and it was a ding thing, and I would collect the ding, and Harry would stand by the stage. We didn't lecture him or anything, just run him in, run him out the other side. And Bob used to think it was the greatest thing there was. And I'd take it.
So when you meant a blow-off?
Yeah, it was a blow-off.
Stage in?
Well, we had a proscenium curtain because we also had we had some dancing girls. And so we had two blow-offs. And if there was a visiting showman, Bob would always bring him in so they could see the two-headed baby. And he said, "This is the greatest $3.50 investment that was ever made in the circus business." And he thought it was great. Well, now I'm on. Was the title was changed from Bud Anderson's to Seal Brothers. They had to form a new company, and all it was Wallace and Clark. And so the same thing happened. Norman had booked, I think it was the Duane family, and they didn't show up.
Which family?
I think it was Duane, the Duane troupe. And yeah, and I'm not sure of that, but anyway. So he needed something else in the show, and part of my duties there, I was announcing the circus that year, and 51, and so I gave him the same pitch. Now, in the meantime, during the winter, I had found a wax studio that made me a beautiful two-headed baby, wax, and so I gave the same thing. I'll do the juggling act, and I'll do the pitch. Was center ring juggler on several shows, including that one, and I did the balancing act for a short time, but then we took that out because it was the show was long enough without it, and I was too busy to do it. And but the difference between him and Bob Stevens with the blow-off was that I was doing that, and I told him I will do this for free, announce the show and do the acts, but in exchange I want the blow-off privilege. So I had the baby in the blow-off.
Did you announce it in the
No, just in the sideshow. But I never gave him anything. I kept all the money, which was okay. So, and it did very well. Back there in those days, you get in those mining towns and stuff, and they were still using a lot of silver dollars. In a moment, I'll tell you my pitch on it. But I would get a lot of silver dollars. And one day, I was doing the juggling act, and Harry, my partner, was sitting in the seats, and Luke came in and sat down beside of him, and he said, "You know, that's the damned most expensive act I've got in this show." And Harry said, "What do you mean? You ain't paying that kid nothing." He said, "No, but he's getting all that baby money." Sometimes that hurts circus man to see somebody get too much money. But it was a wonderful show to be around.
Tell me your pitch.
Okay, the pitch on it.
On what, the baby?
On the baby.
Yeah, two-headed baby. Right.
Behind this curtain, you're going to see probably the strangest freak that was ever born to this world. Back here, you are going to see, from Mysore, India, little Kashmir Singh, a little baby boy who has not one, but two complete, fully developed heads, 4 ears, 4 eyes, 2 noses, 2 mouths, 2 heads on one body. This little baby's mother still lives in Mysore, India, and this baby is only one of 11 children. She is a widow, and the way that she is able to support and raise all the rest of these children is from the goodness of the people who wish to see little Kashmir Singh. And so we do not ask you any particular price to see Kashmir Singh. All that we ask is that you give a donation. Please, open your hearts, open your pocketbooks, because all of the money collected here goes directly to Mrs. Singh for her family. Oh, they loved it. They canned me those silver dollars. And that was the pitch. Well, I wanted something of my own so bad I could taste it. What I wanted a circus. But I knew I couldn't possibly swing that. But along towards the end of June, there was an ad in the billboard, a carnival in Lawton, Oklahoma, the Greater Rainbow Shows had gone out of business, and they had equipment for sale, including a complete 10-in-1 sideshow. So I told Harry, I said, that could be our start. And I said, if we could buy that. And he said, well, I'll agree to it if you can get it for $1,000. And I said, okay. So I was afraid I didn't want the telegram to get in the hands of Mr. Anderson. So I sent him a telegram and told him to wire me back. And my father at that time was the dispatcher for the police department in McCook, Nebraska. So I had them wire him. So then he let me know. And so we left the show. It was towards right at the end of June, somehow in the end of June. And we stopped in McCook, Nebraska saw my father on the way to Lawton, Oklahoma. And we bought the sideshow for $1,000 on July the 3rd. July the 4th, we couldn't do anything. Everything was closed, so we rested that day. July the 5th, we went into Oklahoma City and bought a beer truck, which was an enclosed truck, and went back, loaded up our show. Now, where do we take it? And this is why it was so stupid for me to do this. I knew nothing about the carnival business. I thought with the carnival, they came into town, they put up the posters, and everybody came, just like on a circus. And I found out different. With carnivals, there's good spots and there's bad spots, and you better not play too many of the bad ones. I didn't know where to go. There's a big ad in the billboard. Want shows and so on and so forth. We have the winning route, 24 fairs and celebrations. Oh my God, with a route like that, how could you go wrong? American Midway shows. So we left with our show and headed for Ogden, Kansas to the American Midway shows. A real rag, bag, grift show. Well, we put the show up and we opened on a Tuesday. I took in $2. Tuesday night, it started to rain, and it didn't stop raining for the next 4 days. And we were in a flood. We were able to get all the props and stuff out before it got too bad and loaded in the truck, and we got the truck out up on a lot in a schoolhouse up on the hill.